This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of DocNJock is brought to you by Score, a new mobile app coming soon. Score is an interactive game that lets users win deals at bars and restaurants based on what's going on in live sporting events. Find new places to watch games and save money on your bill at the same time by taking advantage of Score's unique interactive specials that give you an additional stake in the action. A Score special can be anything a location wants it to be, from 10% off an item if a team scores a touchdown to a free round of drinks if a quarterback throws for 400 yards. Any stat can be turned into a game. Pick the deals you want to win, watch the games you want to watch, and score deals in real time. The app will update when your team or player records relevant stats. When the conditions of your deals are met, coupons are sent to your device to show your server or bartender. It's that easy. Score is coming to the App Store and Google Play soon. For more information, check them out on the web at score-app.io and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at ScoreDeals. Score. Watch games. Score deals.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Because I got the Tigers game on in the background, and I just highlighted to you, oh my God, when the Tigers decided to tank, everybody said, screw this, we're out. There's a noon baseball game going on as we're recording this Doc and Jock podcast, and oh my gosh, there's nobody literally at Comerica Park. It's unbelievable. But can you blame the fans? I mean, seriously, the Tigers are brutal. We're kind of getting down to the home stretch here. And finally, when September ends, we can kind of really get over this disastrous 2017 year. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's been brutal. You know what, though? The last week or so, there's been some good highlights to take away. Matt Boyd had a really nice game the other night, and Nick Castellanos has really come alive. You figure with him getting moved from third base, he'd be upset, be a little bit bitter about it. But since his move to right field, he's got a 16-game hitting streak going on right now. He's hitting above 400. So there's some highlights to take out of it, but you're absolutely right. This season can't end soon enough. It's going to be interesting how they enter into the offseason and what they do to address this team. I mean, they're going to have to spend some money on some free agents. I don't know who's going to want to come here because it is a rebuild, but you're going to have to spend some money on some guys. You just sat there and cleared out a ton of cash, so you do have some money to spend. It's just going to be interesting to see how they move these guys around, if any of these young players that they just traded for can come up and make an immediate impact next season. So, you know what? I think the future looks bright, but it is a rebuild, so it's going to be tumultuous for the next couple seasons.
The only thing I'm looking for is the day after the season ends, Al Avila says, thank you, Brett Ausmus, for the time that you served. We're not going to renew his contract. We're not going to fire him, technically. His contract will end, and see you later, Brett Ausmus. I think that will just do enough to make everybody happy because, oh my goodness gracious, the fans in Detroit with football season, and what a tough situation for the Tigers. You got to play games Monday Night Football, and it's just really tough to compete with football as is, despite the fact that, hey, even though they're struggling, my goodness. But yeah, I'm thankful that this awful season's coming to an end. But to talk about something that's positive, oh my goodness. Hey, if you heard Doc and Jock last week, somebody sat here and said that the Giants were prone for an ass kicking. So I'm just going to puff my chest out a little bit. Not because the Lions are great or anything, but it just, if you watch the Giants, if you watch them at all play the Dallas Cowboys, you said to yourself, whoa, it wasn't just an inept performance. They looked like they didn't belong on the field. Add to that they had some injuries, and I thought that the Lions could do some things, but it was a little bit tedious. But with Agnew running that punt return back, that was awesome. It was a nice performance all around by the Lions. And I think the biggest takeaway when I asked on Twitter, people were very impressed that the Lions were willing to run the ball, and Matthew Stafford didn't have to do a whole hell of a lot to defeat the New York Giants on the road at MetLife.
While watching that game, did you feel like at any point that it just might all come crumbling down? I know I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I stayed up for that entire game, and usually it's difficult for me to stay up for an entire Monday Night Football game just because I got to wake up so early, and usually by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, I'm ready just to cash out and just go to sleep. But I stayed up, watched the entire thing, and there were probably 3 or 4 different instances where I was like, this play normally goes against the Lions. So all that being said, I thought the Lions played a great game. They had a game plan. They executed it. The fact that they were willing to run the ball and continuously run the ball. Matt Stafford went to the line numerous times, and they were set to throw the ball. He would check out an audible to a run, and that run would only garner 2 yards at a clip, but they did it over and over and over again, and what they did was they learned how to control the clock. They melted that clock down, and they sat there and they leaned on their defense, and they sat there and they leaned on that run game. And yeah, that run game didn't produce a whole hell of a lot, but it did just enough for them to win that game. Look, Matt Stafford didn't throw for 200 yards that game. He was basically a game manager. And the thing was, when he had to throw, he came up big. He sat there, threw for a couple first downs, threw for a couple touchdowns, and in the end, it was enough. That's all you got to do. In the NFL, I don't care how you win a game. I don't care what's going on with the other team. As long as you get the W, it doesn't matter. Look, Lions have injuries. The Giants have injuries. This was a team that looked anemic with the Giants. I mean, their offense is pitiful. Their defense, however, is exceptional. If they had a offensive line that could protect Eli Manning, that offense would be much, much better. Look, if I was Eli Manning, I would buy Flowers a book called How to Be a Left Tackle and explain to him how he has to be a left tackle and how his job is to block the man in front of him and not let him run by him like he's a damn turnstile. Like Eli Manning has to go to bed at night having flashbacks of Ziggy Ansah just crushing his life and killing him. Honestly, it was unbelievable the amount of pressure that defensive line was able to get on Eli Manning and force him to either make bad throws or stop the running game or just sit there and force turnovers. It was incredible to watch that defense.
Before talking about the Lions and some of my takeaways, do you blame McAdoo for ripping Eli Manning in the media, describing the drive where they took a delay of game penalty when they were very close to scoring a touchdown? I'm like, whoa, this is a quarterback for the Giants organization that's won you 2 Super Bowls, that's done a lot of things, and McAdoo is just coming out there with guns a-blazing, ripping Eli Manning. He hasn't been great, but does he deserve a little bit more respect from, the head man there at the Giants?
Okay, so you're a head coach. You're on the sideline. You see the play clock running down. You see your quarterback trying to audible and check into something else, right? You can call a timeout too. You can sit there and you can make that call. The quarterback doesn't have to just make that call. You can do it as well. So look, Bob McAdoo wants to blame everybody else. That's fine. He had awful play calling. As that game in the Cowboy game falls just as much at his feet as it does Eli's feet, just as much as it does that offensive line's feet.
Because he's supposed to be some offensive guru, and they look terrible.
They look awful.
When you heard the news that OBJ was going to suit up, did it change your perception of the game? For me, it didn't. I just kind of felt like, you know what? This Lions team is going to do just enough to win the game. I felt like OBJ was going to be nothing more than a decoy. So I enjoyed the game fully. Did I have fear that the Lions were going to collapse? Anytime you watch the Lions and you start to see what you see on the field with a lot of penalties, a lot of things, with the running game kind of took a long time to develop. And the first half was relatively close. It was a decent football game. But just watching the Giants and watching the Lions, I felt like the talent gap was substantial. I felt like the Lions seriously had a much better team, and they had a bunch more guys that were going to come there to produce. So I didn't feel like at any point that the Lions were going to lose the game, and that was nice to see that they performed well. They made some mistakes. They can get better, but I was thoroughly impressed with the Lions going on the road, playing a decent team. The Giants, I think they're not going to make the postseason this year. The Cardinals are going to struggle all year. So the Lions are getting lucky. And that's what I thought before this season was part of the reason why I had them winning 10 games was not because I felt like the Lions were this awesome, badass team. I felt like, look, they're going to be the beneficiary of some teams that aren't as good. And some of the luck factor is now bouncing the way of the Detroit Lions. I mean, Matt Prater's field goal was awesome, hits the upright, and boom, goes in, goes sideways, and we get the 3 points. Atlanta's coming in on Sunday, and one of their premier linebackers is out with a substantial injury. So some of the luck factor where in years past would be against the Lions, I feel like it's turning around. I mean, look at the Giants. I mean, I was shocked that Brandon Marshall had that play wide open right in the breadbasket, and he drops the ball, Mr. Butterfinger. So at the same time, in the National Football League, because that's why everybody was so angry with the Lions in years past. It's a league set up for mediocrity from time to time, every couple of years. If you have mediocre management, that you can turn it around. So for the Lions to have a decade plus where they were futile was really now frustrating. Bob Quinn comes in, and what you're seeing and what's super impressive is you're seeing contributions from a lot of different guys. And the first guy we got to highlight is Ziggy Ansah. Dude was balling out of his mind. Dude was playing like he was playing for a paycheck. And it was great to see him pressure Eli Manning. It was great to see the defense make plays. So that was one of the things that most impressed me was this defense, who a lot of people did not talk about, is coming out to ball, and they're doing some things on that football field.
Yeah, going back to your point about OBJ, when I found out he was going to be active, I didn't necessarily think he was going to play a huge part in the game. I just thought he was another option that the Lions had to cover. And I figured he would draw the coverage of Darius Slay. So I thought that would change things around a little bit on the defense, just because now you're taking your best cornerback and you're designating him to their best offensive option, whether he be hurt or not. So I figured that would open up guys like Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. I figured that might sit there and put more importance on their run game with Paul Perkins. But their run game is abysmal because that offensive line's atrocious. Sterling Shepard didn't show me anything. Brandon Marshall looks lost out there. Brandon Marshall's a guy who is a red zone threat, who's a guy who can usually make big plays down the field for you and usually demands the ball. It almost seems like Brandon Marshall has checked out on this season, and they're only 3 games in. And that's a huge red flag for me towards that coaching staff for the Giants. Now, fast forwarding a little bit to what's going to happen on Sunday here with the Falcons. Yeah, you're right. The ball does bounce their way a little bit here. I mean, Vic Beasley might be out. Courtney Upshaw might be out. So they're dealing with some injuries. That being said, the Lions are also dealing with injuries. I mean, you've got a left tackle in Greg Robinson who didn't play a really good game against New York on Monday night. The Lions might also be down their starting middle linebacker because Davis is going through concussion protocol. You're not sure what's going on with Abdullah. I mean, look, I thought for sure he was going to the house when he broke that late runoff, and then next thing you know, he goes to make a cut, and his leg just goes all jello-like and just kind of weeble wobbles back and forth, and next thing you know, he's down. He says he's okay, but I've got some concerns still. You know, so moving forward, I do have some concerns, and I do think Ziggy Ansah played the game of his life. I mean, that guy had more sacks in that one game than he had all last season, which is outstanding, which is great. I think this defense is the real deal. I think the Lions defense comes to play every single game, and I think they look good. I think that defensive line looks good. I think their secondary looks good, and I think they've got some real bright spots in their linebacking core. I think that offense, there's still some work and still some things that need to be improved, especially on the left side. If you looked at how they ran the ball, they ran to the right side the entire time. They don't trust Greg Robinson on that left side. He's got to come along a little bit more. He's got to help solidify that left side. I don't know if he's going to be able to. Hopefully he can sit there and be a Band-Aid until Taylor Decker comes back. Hopefully that's soon. Hopefully that is this season. Not 100% sure. I think Matt Stafford, what I was really impressed with during this game against the Giants, Matt Stafford was in complete control of this game. He never got rattled. He came to the line. He knew what he wanted to do. His checks and his audibles, those things worked out perfect. They helped the team out. At no point did he sit there and he sat there and didn't outplay himself or out frustrate himself. He sat there and he just made the right play. He took what was given to him and he made the right play. He never sat there and never threw into a forced coverage. You know, if the play wasn't there, he threw it away. You know what I'm saying? If he sat there, came to the line, and he seen that they were coming in on him, that it was going to be an all-out blitz, he would audible to a run. You know what I'm saying? He played safe, and he managed the game well. I was really impressed at his maturity and his poise. That's, I think, the one word you can use to describe what Matt Stafford brought to the table on Monday night. He was poised.
And when plays broke down, you saw him use his feet.
Yeah.
23 yards rushing.
He would sit there and he would scramble. And you know what? Those plays help move the chains. You know, it helped set up the next drive. It was exceptional. I thought he played an outstanding. That was probably the best, most complete game I've seen him play since he's been a Detroit Lion.
And watching football, a key position on the offense is tight end. Eric Ebron made an appearance, and as much grief as we give the guy, dude balled out. He played well. 5 receptions, 42 yards, and a touchdown, and it was nice to see. Some people on Twitter said, look, this is the guy that the Lions drafted 10th in the first round. And look, you know, when the Giants scored their touchdown, they went to Ingram on a play that, you know, when you run the ball effectively, you can do a play action and kind of force the defense up, force the linebacker to maybe overcommit, and that's how they scored their touchdown. but it just goes to show you the importance of the tight end position. And I feel like going forward, if Eric Ebron can be in that range, 5 catches, 50, 60 yards, and a touchdown, be that threat, then you don't have to rely on a rookie, Kenny Galladay, to get plays. You can just throw it to him when you have prime opportunities. But Eric Ebron, Amir Abdullah, and Theo Riddick, I would say right now, are going to continue to be the key for this offense going forward. The connection between Stafford and Marvin Jones seems to be there. They're locking in, and they're making plays. So that offense has a lot to work on, but a couple guys can continue to progress. But now the big dog steps in. The Atlanta Falcons come to the house, and the Lions have to play well. The Lions have to go out there and perform very well in order to beat the Atlanta Falcons in a game where if you win, you make a statement, and you can now set the tone for everybody across the league and say, look, we are that team that everybody's talking about. And if you watched some of that Monday night coverage, it was frustrating because it was all about OBJ. It was all about the Giants. And throughout the coverage, it was slanted towards the Giants. But, it was sprinkled in there that, look, Matthew Stafford's the real deal. The announcers were damn near having a heart attack that Jim Caldwell doesn't have an extension. And I was like, dude, Bob Quinn obviously is waiting for the results of this year. And look, at some point in time, you can say Bob Quinn's doing a good job, and we're going to watch to see how his team progresses throughout the regular season. But primetime is the playoffs. And if Matthew Stafford stinks and lays a bomb in the playoffs, if Jim Caldwell doesn't get his team to play solidly and stops making all these penalties and some of these mistakes, he's going to be gone. So for the announcers to do that, I thought was a little bit ridiculous. But at the same time, I felt like the Lions stood toe-to-toe with the Giants and a team that plays solidly on defense. And you went out there and you punched him in the mouth. And to see a guy like Agnew, a special teams player, make a play, it just goes to show you there's a lot more talent on the field, and Bob Quinn is a guy that, is doing the job that we would expect. Find guys that can contribute, but some of the injuries are starting to concern me a little bit. They're starting to pile up a little bit, especially, how dirty did you feel OBJ was slamming Jared Davis? I thought that was Bush, and I felt like maybe the Lions should have retaliated. That was Bush, man, to, really take liberties with Jared Davis, and I'm hoping that throughout this week in the concussion protocol that he can come out and play versus Atlanta. It'd be a huge, massive loss if he's not there on the field Sunday.
I don't think they should have retaliated, but I think there should have been a penalty there. He basically blocked him in the back, and it was an unsafe play. As you can see the results, he's now going through concussion protocol. But you're right. The Atlanta Falcons are the litmus test. If the Detroit Lions can get by the Atlanta Falcons, or might I even say look good, look like a relative team. It's a close game going down the stretch in the fourth quarter. I think that proves to all the Detroit fans, and it proves to the national media that, hey, this team is for real. There are things that are changing here. There's a team here that absolutely gets it. And I think that all goes back to Bob Quinn. So if Bob Quinn wants to wait on offering and extending Jim Caldwell a contract, I think he has all the right to do it, because if you look at the product that's on the field, it's totally different than what we've been used to. It's not the same old Lions. That's why we sat there and we designed 2 brand new t-shirts that you can get at teesprings.com that say not the same old Lions, not SOL, because they're not the same old Lions. This team is different. They're a brand new team. You've got depth on this team. Jared Davis goes out, right? He is the impact player in the middle of that defense. They go and they go to a 4th-round rookie, and mind you, Jared Davis is a 1st-round rookie. They go to a 4th-round rookie. They throw him in there, and that guy's making plays. Do you know what I'm saying? This is not the same old Lions team. So if Bob Quinn wants to do things a little bit different, they don't want to extend Jim Caldwell right away. You know what? That's okay. And what you got to remember too, Jim Caldwell is not Bob Quinn's guy. He's not the guy that Bob Quinn went out and said, you know what? This is going to be the guy who's going to get me to the promised land. He came in, and Bob Quinn basically took over a team where Jim Caldwell was the head of it, and he had a conversation with Martha Ford, who was like, I really think you should probably keep that guy. He said, well, let me talk to him. Let me see if our heads are kind of in the same direction here, and if we have the same feelings on everything. And they sat there, they had a conversation, and for the most part, they agreed on the principles that this team needs to be built on and founded on. So going forward, if Bob Quinn doesn't want to extend Jim Caldwell, I'm going to say, okay, go ahead, Bob. Whatever you want to do. In Bob Quinn, we trust. You know what I'm saying? It used to be in Kenny, we trust. In Bob Quinn, we trust. That's what it is. Now, looking at what's going to happen now on Sunday, look, this team's going to have its hands full. They get a little bit of a bright spot with a guy like Vic Beasley possibly being out and Courtney Upshaw being out. But that being said, the Atlanta Falcons are the litmus test in the NFC. This is the team that sat there and essentially had a Super Bowl within its grasp, and then everything fell apart for them. Play calling got shaky. This offense for the Atlanta Falcons, they have a quarterback who can throw the ball all over the place. They've got a lethal threat with Julio Jones. On top of that, their secondary wide receivers can all make plays, and they have a tight end who's kind of a stud, just a budding stud. And then, you know what? They've got a two-headed monster at running back. Devonta Freeman and Coleman are absolute savages, whether it's catching balls out of the backfield or running between the tackles. Those guys can do it all. So offensively, look, the Detroit Lions defense is going to have its hands full. Now, I think if you flip that around, I think the Detroit Lions offense, I don't think that the Atlanta Falcons pose a similar threat that the New York Giants defense did. That being said, I think the Falcons defense is a very good defense. I just don't think it is the same caliber that they just played on Monday night. And I think that bodes well for the Lions. I'm expecting this game to basically be a shootout. I'm expecting both of these offenses to put up points because they're both high-powered offenses.
To your point, and talking about same old Lions, we might just have to shift it in terms of talking about the postseason. I mean, this team's had success under others as well. They've made the postseason. Matthew Stafford's been in the playoffs, has played teams like Dallas, played teams like New Orleans, but they have not come away with the victory. I mean, last year, you go out to Seattle, arguably a game you could have won had you shown up on offense, had the team not had all the drops and played like they were lost or scared to be on the bright stage and the big lights. So I would say that, same old Lions can potentially be applied and reinstated if they go out to the postseason and bomb, because you know what is primed to happen for a team that potentially could have success. Maybe this is the year they make a run. They play really well. They get that home playoff game. They get that victory. They go to the NFC title. Maybe even they get to the Super Bowl. And then potentially they get to the big stage and boom goes the dynamite and they get destroyed. So same old Lions is going to die very, very slowly, because in the back of everybody's mind...
It should. I mean, look
what the talk was on our Twitter page.
We've been dealing with this for over 60 years.
The talk on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, the first thing people are voting for is potentially that the Lions are 2-0, but they're poo-pooing it a little bit because the opponents have sucked. So people are reserved and saying, hey, guys, relax, easy with your T-shirts, not same old Lions. People still are cautious when they talk about the Detroit Lions because they're one injury away, they're one goofy play away from, you wouldn't be surprised if they lost the next couple games. So at the same time, we do got to pump the brakes a little bit. It's great to sit here this week in the middle of the week and talk glowingly about the Lions. But at the same time, when you objectively look at them and we say, what does this team potentially possess? They have to go out there and prove it week in and week out. And not a lot of fans would be surprised if they dipped in performance the next couple weeks. That's why I'm so fascinated to see what kind of game the Lions play on Sunday, because I don't want to play the same old game. I don't want to keep it a dink and dunk kind of game, because when you look at what the Lions did on Monday Night Football, they were so sure that the Giants offense couldn't do much that they tried to control the game running the football. Mm-hmm. They basically took the football out of Matthew Stafford's hands, and they were periodically trying to throw the ball deep. But in essence, they played a very conservative game. Against the Falcons, you could be looking at a 21-0 deficit just like that with Julio Jones, Sanu, the running game. Matt Ryan can throw the ball all over the place. So for me, I want to start the game right away and give us your best shot. Show us what you got. You got to connect with Marvin Jones. You got to have some screenplays that do some things. You got to force continued turnovers. And if the Lions don't get turnovers from the Falcons, I'm not so certain that the Lions can sit there and go toe-to-toe with the Falcons. Do you think so? You think they can go toe-to-toe if it's an offensive shootout? I feel like the game plan is when we get the ball, we need to run it and hold on to it, keep Matt Ryan on the sideline, and the best defense against Matt Ryan is having our offense just stay on the field however long and however way they can do it.
I think you're going to see them implement a game plan very similar to what they used on Monday night against the Giants. They're going to try to control the ball. They're going to sit there. They're going to lean heavily on their defense. That defense is going to have to sit there and stop Matt Ryan, and is going to have to stop that offense at some point, whether it be a turnover or whether it be a turnover on downs, or maybe they just get lucky and they sit there and they force them to a field goal, and that field goal gets botched. At some point, the defense is going to have to make a play that's going to have to turn the tide for this team if they're expecting a win. And all that being said, you can't tell me that this is the same old Lions, because if you look at this team and you look at what is ran out on this field, game in and game out, there's now depth. There are now guys who were drafted making impact plays game in and game out. It's not a team that is built and predicated on having 3 superstars and just a bunch of scrubs. It's not the same old team. This team is being put together and it's being built, and it's going to take time. It's being built the way a good football franchise builds teams. It's building through the trenches. It's getting guys who are sitting there who can make an impact on special teams. Guys who can sit there and when a guy goes down, it's next man up. That guy then comes out and he can make a play. You know what I'm saying? It's not...
Go Lions! Yeah!
That's right, Jason. You tell them. It's not the same old crap where you got to sit there and you got to rely on a guy like Calvin Johnson. You got to rely on Ndamukong Suh. And if those guys fall flat, or if those guys retire, or if those guys leave, you got a giant hole to fill. It's not like that anymore. It's now a team effort. It's a concerted effort. Bob Quinn is building this thing differently, and I like it. I think it's good. And look, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid, and I'm not stuffing my face with the cornbread. I'm just telling you what I see. Do I think they're going to have their hands full this week? Absolutely. Am I expecting a win? I predict them to be 0-3 right now. Do you know what I'm saying?
We just want to see them compete. Exactly. Just go out there and play a decent game and give yourself a chance. And this might be one of those games where Stafford does some things in the fourth quarter. It's just hard to look at the competition in the Atlanta Falcons and think that we're on the same level.
Look,
at this point in time.
This is a team that sat there and they were beating the pants off of the Patriots. The Patriots, you have to remember, are the pinnacle. They are the one team, the gold standard in the NFL. And this team, the Atlanta Falcons, were beating the pants off of them, and then all of a sudden, they had a brain fart, and they tried doing different things with their play calling. And you know what? Hats off to the Patriots, because they sat there and they took advantage of it. You know what I'm saying? The Atlanta Falcons basically blew the Super Bowl last year. So, and look, this is a team, too, that hasn't lost anything really from that Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? If anything, they were able to reload with guys in that offense has stayed the same, that defense has gotten a little bit better. So, yeah, the Detroit Lions are going to have their hands full this Sunday.
They're going to have their hands full. I just want to see them go out there and compete, try to play a clean football game. It's going to have a playoff vibe. I feel like the fans are going to be into it, and you have a chance now to get everybody on board with this team. I mean, nationally, they're starting to speak on the Lions. I mean, you got Peter Schrager, who basically wears the Lions.
That guy loves the Lions.
He went out there before the season, and I'm still shocked to see it and watch it.
It's something about the name Pete. You got to remember, Peter King used to love the Lions. He used to sit there and just praise them. They're going to go, and they're going to be competitive, and they're going to get to the NFC Championship game every single year. And they would sit there and they go 0-16. Get the hell out of here, Peter King. Pete Schrader, that guy's drinking the Kool-Aid and eating the cornbread. It's all over his face. I mean, he's got crumbs in his beard right now. He loves the Lions.
And he's saying it on a National Football League televised program. It's unbelievable. But a lot of people walked away from the game on Monday night saying, hey, it's the prime time. People are watching. And they said, wow, the Lions can do some things. And when Matthew Stafford's the highest paid athlete, you get some attention. John Gruden and Clay Travis love themselves some Matthew Stafford. Clay Travis came out and said that potentially the Lions could win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. So people are starting to turn it around. It's exciting around here. I mean, when the football team is playing well, people get excited. They puff their chest out. It's going to be fun to watch the Detroit Football Lions play against the Falcons. It's going to be a fun time, man. It's nice to talk about the Lions in glowing terms, but in terms of same old Lions, we got to see just a couple more weeks to see how they perform against some high-level competition. So I would be reserved to put aside the notion of same old Lions. Just my opinion. Great stuff, sir. Always enjoy talking Lions football. I can't wait to watch Lions Falcons this Sunday. We'll take our first time out, come back. We got to hit on college football. The uproar from the Michigan fans continues, and it's one of those things where we got to talk about it. What is the future going to look like for the Michigan Wolverines? Because they got a huge test coming up. We'll talk about it right after this. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic. When Adam and I first started this project back in 2013, we were wondering, okay, how do you take the audio that you record and get it up to the internet? So we did some research. We figured out, okay, a good host site needs to have a solid platform and it needs to be easy to use. And thank goodness we found Podomatic. We've recorded well over 600 to 700 weekly podcasts, and we've only used one host site. Why use Podomatic.com? Quick, very great customer service. You can generate links very quickly so that all your supporters can hear your audio. Let's say you go out and you record a great podcast with a great guest and you go to upload it and oops, your host site can't take it anymore because you don't have enough bandwidth. for us, we just love using Podomatic because when we get a great guest on like last week in Jim Leland, boom, we upload it to Podomatic and everybody can support it. Even journalists in town are live tweeting our interviews. And why are we able to have that level of success? Because we use a great host site. So if you're looking to start a brand new project, Doc and Jock and all the other hosts here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, we're only going to recommend one host site, Podomatic.com. So I got a chance to peek into Michigan versus Air Force. My goodness, cuz Air Force decided that we're just going to roll with one pass the whole game. Wow, what a performance by Air Force. I was like, man, Michigan should have destroyed them. They didn't. A lot of people are very, very frustrated with the Michigan offense, and especially what the hell they're trying to execute in the red zone. People are like, dude, you guys have a team, you have a solid defense, you can't look inept in the red zone. Now you see an injury to one of their key players in Tariq Black, who's now going to be out for a substantial period of time with a foot injury. A lot of concern over there with Michigan, but I'm saying, look, you guys are 3-0, and you're doing some things. It's, I guess, what you would call the preseason when you play a couple games against the likes of Air Force to kind of work out some of these kinks. But you're going up in level of competition playing Purdue, who's going to be thrilled to have Michigan play them. So what's your level of concern right now? What was your reaction to the performance against the Air Force?
All right, overall, I think Michigan fans need to just maybe pump the brakes a little bit. I think there is some cause for some concern, all right, but I think everybody needs to pump the brakes just a little bit. Look, you sat there, you went to a neutral site, you played a team like Florida, you got to win, all right? You came back home and you played Cincinnati, and that game was kind of shaky. In the end, you pulled away. You played a service academy. When you play the service academies, there is never any upside to playing them. You should beat them. If you don't beat them, you got popped and now you stink, all right? The offense that Air Force runs is very difficult to defend. They can basically run out of anything. They had one big pass play that sat there and resulted in a touchdown. Basically, Michigan's defense only got beat one time, and that was on that touchdown. Everything else, it just kind of, it's the way the game unfolded, right? I think there are some good things to take away from this Michigan defense. I think there is some cause for some concern with this Michigan offense. And you're right, in the red zone, they have been absolutely brutal. That being said, let me try to explain why I think they've been brutal. This is just my takeaway after watching the game against Air Force. Michigan's offense, their wide receivers, they are basically speed guys. They are guys who can sit there and run up the field, get behind the defensive backs, and then it's on Wilton Speight to sit there and try to make that connection with them for the pass downfield. And when it happens, it's a beautiful thing. You've seen it in the Florida game with Tariq Black. All right, you've seen him do it a couple times already this season. Now he's going to be sidelined for a substantial time, probably the majority of the rest of the season, if not all of the season. All right. So that being said, they have guys who can sit there and they can jet down the field, get behind the defensive backs in the secondary. Now, when that field is shortened, it makes it much more difficult to do that. They don't have, I mean, you go up and down their wide receiving core. They don't have a lot of guys who can sit there and essentially do what a guy like Golden Tate can do. Catch a 5-yard pass in the flats and then try to stretch the field. They just don't have guys like that. And you know what? That falls at the feet of Jim Harbaugh because he's the guy who's doing the recruiting here. If you look at the run game is effective in spurts. It's not, they can't sit there and they can't grind it out and then break off a big play. I mean, if you look at Ty Isaac, he's probably their most effective running back, and he sits there and he gets stuffed 4 times out of 5, and then he'll sit there and he'll break off a 25, 30-yard run. That's not good. And if you look at a guy like Chris Evans was the guy who they nominated as their starting running back going into the season.
He was the guy that fumbled and then never saw the field again.
Yeah, he's been mostly ineffective this season. So they got to figure some things out. And yeah, look, they've had a really tough offseason, right? Florida's a tough opponent. I don't care how bad they look, and I don't care how many guys were suspended. Air Force is a tough opponent. I don't care that it is a service academy, and I don't care that they're not ranked. I don't care about any of that. Do you know what I'm saying? And you played a Cincinnati team that had a coach from Ohio State who had something that he wanted to prove because he absolutely hates Michigan because he came from Ohio State. Do you know what I'm saying? So those 3 games, those were difficult games. Now they've got to go on the road, and now they have to take on a Purdue team who is chomping at the bit to sit there and pop this Michigan team. It's going to be a difficult game. they're going to have their hands full, and they're going to have to sit there and show something. But I think this team overall, I think each week they grow a little bit more, and I think all of this early adversity for this team is going to end up paying off in the long run.
So you're saying the fans potentially are a little bit impatient, and maybe the desire and the vitriol that they have right now maybe is unfounded?
No, I think there is some cause to be upset and concerned. I'm trying to give you reasons why everybody is upset. They just need to kind of turn it down a little bit.
Okay, so those that are on Wilton Speight and they're like, look, this is a guy that we know what he is. I'm kind of surprised, in essence, that they're willing to kind of brush him aside. I feel like he gives the team the best opportunity to win. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the system. He's poised. Now, can he make all the throws? Is he as athletic as you would like him to be? No. So, but there is a growing swell of people that are like, look, this season, whatever it may be, let's just go to McCaffrey. Let's just go to somebody else and let him develop this year. And I'm like, wait a minute. This team, Michigan, has a chance to win 10 games this year. Now, people are saying, look, we're willing potentially to take a step back, only win 8 or 9 games, but as long as we know that McCaffrey's the guy or whoever's next can come in and develop, because I think a lot of people have written off Wilton Speight as a guy that is not, when they play the big dogs, going to do anything. And so people are a little bit nervous, and I was quite surprised at the debate this week for those that just say, throw Wilton Speight on the bench, we're done.
See, I think that's short-sighted to do that, though. I
mean,
it's
long-sighted because they already assume, okay, versus the big dogs, this guy ain't going to cut it, so we're Michigan, and we got to be building towards the national title.
But you have a season, you have a season in your hand right now where you could possibly win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games. I don't think you're going to win 12 games, but you have the potential to be able to do that. Why are you going to write your season off right now? You're just getting into Big Ten play. And like I said, I think you're going to have a tough matchup here against Purdue. Purdue's a team who sat there and took number 16 Louisville to within a touchdown. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a difficult game, but I think you've got a good enough defense. You could probably have one of the best defenses in the country right now. I think your offense needs to come along a little bit. I think you need to sit there and they're going to have to fix this offense. I think you sit there and you move some pieces around on that offensive line, or you sit there and you simplify what's going on for that offensive line. It all starts up front. We talked about it with the Lions. It's all up front. If that offensive line can settle down and make Wilton Speight feel more comfortable, he's going to perform better. You know, I don't think he's any great shakes of a quarterback, but I think if you simplify what the offensive line has to do and what they're doing, and basically for Wilton Speight, you go back to when he was just taking over this team, you know, simple 3-step drops, unload the ball. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. You have to simplify this offense for this team right now to get the most out of it. And yeah, you don't want to do that because you're supposed to be moving forward. You're supposed to be working in more complex plays. You're supposed to be working in new things. And you're supposed to be developing on things that you already have. But you got to remember what you lost last year. You know what I'm saying? It's not one of those things where you just plug a guy in and, all right, we're going to pick up right where we left off. No, I mean, you got brand new guys on that offensive front who are doing things for the very first time. And that all trickles down to your quarterback, trickles down to your run game, which then trickles down to your passing game. I mean, it's all connected. Football's a weird game, man. It's all team. And you know, one guy can sometimes take over a game, but you know what? You got to have other guys supporting and rowing the boat. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where, look, you're going to have your hands full this week. It's going to be a difficult matchup. Pare down that offensive line. Let them just sit there, take a step back, maybe regress that playbook just a little bit, and do the same thing with Wilton Speight, and then watch what happens.
The point spread I see is 9.5.
It's moved up to 10 just now.
I don't see Michigan covering that. I feel like it's going to be a close contest. Michigan's played pretty well on defense. I feel like they have a chance versus Purdue, but I feel like if they don't play their A game, if they don't do a lot of things differently, maybe a couple trick plays here and there, effectively run the football, and I guess what everybody is clamoring for is when you get to the red zone, it's great to have a kicker in Quinn Nordine that's doing things, is blasting the hell out of the football, but if you continue to rely on your kicker for the 3 points, you got to get touchdowns, and everybody will say that. Touchdowns,
Absolutely.
baby.
Absolutely.
That's the key for the game, right? If you don't score touchdowns, you probably don't win.
Absolutely. And I think if
score the rock, baby.
If I had to sit there and put money on it, I'm gonna take the 10 points. I'm gonna go with Purdue. All right. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Purdue's going to be a tough opponent.
It's on the road, right? At Purdue.
At Purdue. So you've seen their struggles last year to sit there and try to win on the road. I think this team's a little bit better than in certain aspects than it was last year. But that being said, I think if they pare down the defense or pare down the offensive line, what they have to do, All right, you make things a little bit simpler for them. That then helps Wilton Spade out. And next thing you know, that running game picks up a little bit, and then the passing game picks up a little bit. And yeah, look, you're at a disadvantage because Tariq Black is hurt right now, but you got other guys who can sit there and fill in. You know what I'm saying? Grant Perry's a very good wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones, a very good wide receiver. You got guys who can make plays. Get the ball in the playmakers' hands. Let them make plays.
Now, switching gears, talking about the Spartans' primetime game, baby. The Spartans are going to be well-rested, at home, welcoming in Notre Dame, 8 o'clock, Fox Sports. It's going to be an amazing contest, and one where I feel like there could be some back and forth. I feel like this could be a classic matchup between Brian Kelly and Mark D'Antonio. Last year's contest was pretty good, and it's a shame that Notre Dame and Michigan State just don't lock it in and play each other every single year. There's some rumors that this might be the last game in this rivalry between State and Notre Dame. And it's a shame too, because there have been some classic games. I believe one of the games where, Mark D'Antonio tried a trick play was against Notre Dame in a night game. And I look at Notre Dame kind of as a measuring stick contest. Early in the year, you play them usually around the second or third game, and it's a chance for the Spartans to show what they are. People said that Florida was a measuring stick game for Michigan, and I truly believe that this Notre Dame contest is going to be a measuring stick game for Michigan State. I feel like it's going to be tough because, Notre Dame comes in with a decent offense. They're going to be salty. Notre Dame is a team where they're just looking to unload offensively and to put together a decent contest. A team like Michigan State might be that team that Notre Dame can execute some things against. And my goodness, their quarterback over there at Notre Dame is unbelievable. Wimbush had some amazing stats in their 49-20 win over Boston College last week. 21 rushes for 207 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's eye-opening. Wimbush is a guy that, in my opinion, you got to go out there and you got to keep him in the pocket. The Spartans have experience in trying to execute that game plan because of last year in trying to stop Deshaun Kaiser. So initially, they have on film sort of a game plan in order to stop Wimbush, but he presents a totally different nightmare than Deshaun Kaiser did. But the Spartans have looked at running quarterbacks in the past, and one of the keys that I would say is when you got a guy that likes to roam around and likes to run, you just got to keep him in the pocket. You got to protect your gaps, and you can't fall for potentially plays where they're going to run the ball or fall for plays where it's designed to potentially roll out the quarterback. If you fall for it and you let Wimbush get out of the pocket, forget it. He'll get yards. He's probably going to get some running yards. He's going to do some things, but if you can limit it to like 6 yards or less, and you can hit him and you can make him a little bit rattled in terms of, hey, when he thinks about it, you get him a little bit to have happy feet in the passing game, then maybe you can force some turnovers. The key is you got to keep his ass in that pocket. How hard is it going to be to do? It's going to be real hard. This is a game I think you want to watch all the way through the 4 quarters. I think it's going to be close and low scoring. It might be in the neighborhood of 13-13 going into that 4th quarter. And it's going to be about who can run the football, who makes the key plays late. And maybe this go around, the Spartans maybe just don't have enough to pull it out. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did win. Initially going on, I got Notre Dame probably being a little bit of a slight favorite going on the road and playing Michigan State.
Yeah, this is going to be a statement game for Michigan State. All right, look, Notre Dame has had a couple of really good games this year. And Brandon Wimbush, he's the guy who just gets that whole offense going. He's already accounted for 8 of their touchdowns this season. Like you said, the guy can sit there and he runs all over the place. The key is for Michigan's defense to sit there, stack the box, keep him contained, keep him in the pocket, and when you do get a chance to hit him, you light him up. You hit him, you rattle him a little bit, like you said, and you make him sit there and think twice about running the ball. You force him to pass. And I think what you're going to see for this Michigan defense is they're going to sit there and they're going to stack 8 guys in the box. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to try to get hits on the quarterback. So your defensive backs and your secondaries they're going to be on an island. And those guys are going to have to make plays. They're going to have to sit there and force a turnover here and there. And I think Michigan State, because of the week off, I think they can game plan a little bit better, and I think they've got a good shot to win this game. I think it's going to be a close game, like you said, going into the 4th quarter, and I think Michigan State has a good chance to sit there and pull away if they can get the pressure on Wimbush. They're going to have to hit him, like you said, and they're going to have to get in his head early and often, and if they don't, they can pull away. They've got the offensive firepower to sit there and be able to pull away in this game. I think offensively for Michigan State, though, you're going to have to depend on Lewerke to do what he's been doing the last couple games. You know, he's going to have to run the ball when he has a chance. He's going to have to make passes and get completions. I think it's going to put a lot on those specialty players, you know, your wide receivers, your tight ends, and your running back. I mean, look, LJ Scott is going to have to show up. He's going to have a big game here. And you know what? I think he does. I think he lives for moments like this. I think, look, like you said, primetime game. It's going to be a nationally televised game on Fox. This is a game where guys like LJ Scott rise to the occasion. And I think you're going to see a trick play from a guy like D'Antonio. You know what I'm saying? He loves games like this too. So I think Michigan State has a good shot to win this game. I think they can win this game. I think it's going to be an interesting game. Right now, Michigan State is favored by 4 points. I think you take the 4 points, and I think Michigan State wins this game outright. I think it's a close game. I think it's probably going to be a 21-20 type game.
Ooh, I can't wait. Let me hit you with some facts. Since Kelly has shown up at Notre Dame, he's 3-2 against the Spartans, but MSU has won 11 of the last 18 meetings. D'Antonio's 4-4. So either way, it's like I said, you know, it's going to be super close, and it's going to be decided by a handful of plays. So I think it's going to be a game that lives up to the hype, and all the fans at Michigan State get to tailgate. And there's nothing like tailgating all day in East Lansing if it's a nice weather day. Oh man, it's amazing. And then I read here they might not play Notre Dame again until 2026, and that's a damn shame because of the fact that these two teams are usually pretty close in terms of the talent. Both teams recruiting in the Midwest, and they usually produce great contests. Both Michigan and Michigan State have always played great contests versus Notre Dame, and it's a shame that the rivalry for both teams has been kind of up and down. And 2026, I guess that would be one of those things where you say, well, unfortunately, you got to develop new rivalries. It's just a shame that you're going to lose the rivalry versus Notre Dame. It's always nice to see.
Things that are like for Michigan State going into this game. 1, they're at home. 2, they had a week off. 3, I think that they can get to Notre Dame's quarterback, and I think they can rattle him. And once that happens, I think the wheels start to fall off a little bit for Notre Dame, and I think it becomes a slippery slope for them. And I think Michigan State can sit there and get ahead, and they can stay ahead.
Let's say you do contain Winbush. They still got junior running back Josh Adams, who did some damage, 229 yards rushing last week versus Boston College. So don't discount him as well because of the fact that, hey, if they do, you know, obviously Kelly has realized that some teams are game planning to try and stop the quarterback. So then you can just kind of maybe highlight somebody else. And Josh Adams seems to be a guy that potentially, if it's not Winbush, could be another guy that can cause some damage for the Spartans if you don't contain him as well.
From this weekend, because we've got 3 huge games going on. Who do we learn the most about and why? You got the Lions taking on the Atlanta Falcons, who we've already established are basically the litmus test in the NFC. You've got Michigan State taking on a very good Notre Dame team, and we both agree that Notre Dame's a good team. And if you can get a win here, that might catapult this team. And then you've got Michigan going on the road to face a Purdue team that looks like they should be in contention and looks like a team who can sit there and give you fits.
Very good question. Solid. I would say that for me, in terms of what a team needs to do to prove themselves, I would say the Lions have the most to prove and the most to show. But at the same time, Michigan is a team that's really kind of being scrutinized heavily. A lot of people don't count on Michigan State to win this game. They don't have high expectations for them. So it's still going to be interesting to me, being a Spartan, to watch that game. Michigan has to do some things, but the team that is going to show people the most is going to be the Detroit Lions, because of the fact that they have to go out there on the big stage, and they got to go out there and beat a proven team. So for me, it's going to be the Lions. In terms of the 3, I think the Lions lose. Michigan lose. I think, you know what? All 3 lose this week. It would be my bold prediction. All 3 lose.
Wow. I think that the team who stands the most to gain from this weekend is probably Michigan State. You go on, you beat Notre Dame, and then now we're talking, okay, Michigan State's back. Michigan State is a team that's going to cause fits. You had them going, 6-6, I think, this year. I think at that point, you sit there and now you reevaluate what you predicted for them. And you know what? Maybe this team is challenging a Michigan. Maybe this team is challenging
maybe up to
Ohio
7 or
State.
8 wins, yeah.
Right. Maybe they're now contending, maybe not this year, but next year, they're contending for the Big Ten. All right? Maybe they move everything forward. I think you're right. The Lions, here's the thing. This is my issue with the Lions, right? Going into the season, I think we both had them with a loss. So if they go out and they lose anyways, they're just 2-1. What did we really learn? Okay, cool. They're not at the same level as the Atlanta Falcons. We didn't think that they were going to be this year. So I don't think there's a whole lot to really gain if they sit there and they drop this game. If they win, hey, you know what? We got something to talk about. But I don't think they're going to win this game. You know what I'm saying? And as far as Michigan goes, I think we expect Michigan to beat Purdue. I think it's going to be a tougher game than what we had expected. But you know what? Every game that they've played this season's been a tougher game than we've expected. So I don't think there's a whole lot for them to gain or lose there. So for me, it's Michigan State.
Can't wait. Great weekend of football ahead. It's going to be a fun Saturday and Sunday, no doubt about it, around these parts of town. Woo-wee. Stay with us. After this final timeout, the Doc and Jock Pro Wrestling Report, a go-home show ahead of a pay-per-view, a look at SmackDown, which I think did not impress the both of us. Stay with us. The Doc and Jock Pro Wrestling Report is next. If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, thank you so much. We appreciate all the downloads. We appreciate the opportunity to go out and cover events around town. If you want to continue to put wind in the sails of this project, all we ask is go check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operation. It's where you can go to see who hosts what podcast when. You can go click through the Amazon banner. You can buy tickets to all sporting events, and we greatly appreciate it. It's how we keep this operation going. It's how we keep the lights on in the studios, the mics hot here in our Sterling Heights office. We're continuing to expand, continuing to do great things, and it's all because of your great support. Check us out, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. What a week in wrestling. You excited for No Mercy this upcoming Sunday? You got plans to watch it at all?
I'll probably take it in. I'm not super pumped for any of it. Look, I'm like,
really?
Yeah, I mean, okay.
A little oversaturated?
I guess. You know, I have a feeling I know how everything's going to end up playing out. So it just kind of, I don't feel like I'm going to be shocked. I'm not on the edge of my seat. The one match I want to see is the John Cena Roman Reigns match. And I know how that's going to end. I already know who's going to win that. There's no good way for John Cena to win that match, right? It doesn't do any good for anybody. So Roman Reigns is going to win it because he needs the rub, right? And they're looking to catapult him. It's supposed to be like a passing of the torch type thing. I think at some point Roman Reigns beats him, and John Cena comes back from filming his movies, and then John Cena will look to get his win back at some point, whether it be at Survivor Series or whatever one of the big matches is that's coming up.
I'm excited to see Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar. I feel like that could be a slobber knocker.
I think that'll be a great match, but do you see Braun winning? Do you think they're going to put the belt on him?
No, see, I think that's
the thing.
Because all the talk has been and all the success has been in the ring with Braun Strowman. I think that it just goes to show you how you elevate a Brock Lesnar more by having him beat Braun Strowman. And still, at the same time, I think potentially that a Braun Strowman can walk away with the loss and still be the guy, because as long as he has a decent match and does some damage to Brock Lesnar, I think that people are going to be super happy.
And I think you're absolutely right, but again, I already know how that match is going to turn out. I think Brock is going to win that match. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have Brock versus Roman Reigns, and I think they're still going to go ahead with that storyline where Roman Reigns is the one who's going to get the title off of Brock. I mean, we're not going to see Brock at another pay-per-view. That they basically have come out and stated that much. So Brock won't be any more pay-per-views. He's going to sit there and he's not going to be on TV hardly ever because he only has 25 dates, and I think he's already filled up most of those. So the next time you're going to see him will probably be at WrestleMania when Roman Reigns takes the strap off of him. So your WWE Universal Galactic Championship is now MIA again.
In terms of a go-home show, I felt like Raw did a decent job in terms of elevating all the matchups that we're going to see. I didn't think there was really a signature moment outside of Roman Reigns going in there and dropping bombs on John Cena, but John Cena wasn't there. And like we had said last week, it's just been basically a promo fest between those two. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more in-ring action, but in terms of hyping it up and making people want to see a matchup, by keeping them away from each other and just having them give great promos, I felt like it did the job. It really highlighted a decent Raw for me in terms of having Roman Reigns call John Cena a hypocrite for being a part-time wrestler, like John Cena did back in 2012 when he was feuding with The Rock. I thought it was well played, and Roman Reigns kind of going hard in the paint sounded real. It was believable. I liked the promo. I felt like it elevated the matchup, and I feel like he did his part in terms of when it was his turn to do the promo. He did his part to make the matchup relevant, and you're right. I do believe that Roman Reigns is going to walk away with the victory to cement himself as the guy. That's what John Cena's job is these days.
Yeah, I think he did a good job with this promo. The one thing that I was most impressed with coming out of this Raw, and I put it in the notes that I sent you, I was impressed with Alexa Bliss. And I'm impressed with her ability to sell as a heel. I think she does a very good job. You know, she had the whole thing going on with Nia Jax, and then next thing you know, they have a match, and Sasha Banks comes out as Alexa Bliss is trying to leave, and she runs in. As she's backing up to get away from Sasha, she runs into Nia Jax, and then next thing you know, Bayley comes out at the end of the match, and the three of them attack Nia Jax, and then you got Alexa basically putting herself between Bayley and Sasha Banks, and she's like, yeah, these are my new girlfriends, and she does such a good job. I'm so impressed with her ability to work as a heel. I think she does a great job. On top of that, she's very attractive, and I think she cuts a great promo, and I think she does a very good job in the ring. So every single week, I get more and more impressed with Alexa Bliss's ability to work as a heel and to sit there and to try to make that belt feel relevant. I think she does a very, very good job.
I think you and I both were impressed that WWE now has a loss counter for Kurt Hawkins. That was awesome. 115 straight losses. I like the fact that he hyped it up and said, who's next? Who's going to help me defeat this awful streak? And I'm like, you know what? Keep it going to WrestleMania, man. Get it to 200, maybe 220. Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
I thought it was good. I thought it was funny. He's a really good follow on social media. Like if you follow him on Twitter, he's a really good follow. Like I would recommend following because he takes it all in stride. You know what I'm saying? He knows he's a job guy and he's getting paid to be a job guy. And he does a very good job of putting his losses over. And now he comes out in WWE, has him recognize what he's already recognized on social media. I think it's outstanding. I also thought Braun looked really good in the promo where he was sitting there going back and forth with Brock. I thought he came out looking much better than Brock looked in this because Paul Heyman was the one doing all the talking for Brock up until the very, very end. But I thought Braun looked very strong going back and forth with Paul Heyman.
The part of the show that I did not like was, how do you have Jason Jordan basically lose to all the top guys and then shoot himself to this position where he can have a match for the Intercontinental title? I'm like, okay. I mean, it's just a feud to have. I just feel like he's nowhere near ready to have a feud with The Miz, and you give him 7 days? That's the feud? Yeah. I mean, they've been talking back and forth for a little bit of time now, from the time when Jason Jordan debuted on the Miz TV.
Have they really been talking, or has Miz just been taking pot shots at Kurt Angle?
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's not a feud I'm invested in, and no one in their right mind believes that Jason Jordan's going to walk away with the title. Maybe as a surprise, you have that swerve, but I don't see it. I think that the Miz gets over big time in that contest, and I don't think that Jason Jordan deserves to be in the ring. See, what I think is what they should incorporate, and a perfect title for Jason Jordan, if you wanted to have it, was bring back the TV title. A Raw TV title, make it something special, and it was an old WCW staple where it was just a belt that no matter what was going to go on, you knew that title was going to be defended. Similar to what they're doing with the U.S. title, but there's still been some weeks where it's not defended. But the TV title match, too, one of the caveats, I don't know if you remember, was usually the match had to have a limit of like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so you can add that into there. I feel like, I know that there's a lot of belts already, but introducing the TV title would be great. And a guy like Jason Jordan could work his way up, be the TV champion, fight a couple guys, maybe have a couple matches that go 10 minutes, and he can showcase his skills. But to elevate to the Intercontinental title matchup, it does not seem deserved at all.
Yeah, the TV title was a great starter title. Like you said,
it's a great starter title.
It was where you kind of basically came in on the ground floor. You were a guy who was to be watched. Keep tabs on this guy, watch him elevate himself, and then he sits there and gets his shot at the Intercontinental, or he gets a shot at the U.S. title, and then you watch him elevate himself from there to sit there and become an actual contender for either the championship or the WWE Universal Championship belt. So, yeah, I think you're right. 7 days? That's what we get.
Right.
And like, we're not going to see anything because there's no more TV that's going to go on. So you do this on a Monday, and next thing you know, they're wrestling on Sunday. Okay, cool. Right?
One of the moments that was great was Enzo Amore does this thing, and then Braun Strowman comes out and destroys his ass, and that was perfect. I think it was a message subliminally to Enzo, like, look, here's your shit. We know you do it. We know that the fans like it, but, you know, take an ass whooping from Braun Strowman. And it was awesome.
They've been burying Enzo for a while.
And they keep doing it.
For a while. And then next thing you know, you got, and then you have Neville come out, and Neville does his Falcon Arrow to him. And you know what I'm saying? It's just like, you already got smushed by Braun, and now Neville comes out, and he just does a move that is so protected and hardly ever gets used. It's here's the burial, and now let's throw some more dirt on Enzo. And it's all backstage politics, because like the Miz said last week, He's been kicked out of the locker room. He's been kicked off a tour bus. It just, Vince McMahon, there's a reason that he is on 205 Live. It's to get him away from Vince. Vince is tired of him. Vince is sick of him. And that was why they sat there and they separated him and Big Cass. And then he goes on his Twitter tirade, basically talking smack about Cass when Cass injures himself in their match. It's just, he is hot right now, and he's hot for all the wrong reasons.
To have the matchup at the end to determine the Intercontinental Champ was okay. I really enjoyed the tag matchup with Sheamus and Cesaro. I felt like, having all the teams in there was great. I really liked the chemistry between Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose.
You didn't think they looked sloppy? I thought they looked very sloppy. It was like 3 or 4 botched spots.
Yeah, but I thought that, when you have those guys in the ring, you got so many guys in there, it's really hard to kind of call that kind of matchup. But in essence, when those guys come out, the entrance is great. I like their chemistry. I like the tag team of Sheamus and Cesaro. I feel like if you're going to have Seth Rollins lose the tag belts, I would have it go back to Sheamus and Cesaro. That's the team. I think that's the best tag team right now outside of the New Day and the Usos.
The Usos, yeah, I agree with you.
Top 3.
I agree with you 100%. I like Dean and Seth. I thought they looked sloppy. I thought this match, I wasn't really interested in it. I have no idea what is going on with Anderson and Gallows. I feel like those two guys have been totally underused. Yeah. And you know what? If at some point you want to bring what was the Bullet Club back together with Finn Balor and Anderson and Gallows, I think it would be outstanding. I think it would be great. I think you could sit there and you could help elevate those guys because Finn is so over. And the smart fans know what that is. The smart fans, when they almost two-sweeted a couple weeks ago, the smart fans were popping hard for it, and they want it. So just give it to them already. You know what I'm saying?
That and the broken gimmick, man. I know they're doing it more and more, but they have to have, at least give one of the Hardys a run, dude. And right now it's kind of, they're right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like seeing them in the middle of the pack.
They're just guys who are there to help get other guys over. They're basically on the John Cena bandwagon right now, where you're going to win a couple matches here and there, but your job is to give the rub to other guys.
Now, switching over to SmackDown, my review was pretty poor. I didn't like really none of it. Shane McMahon cut a good promo to start the program, but after that, it just felt like, ooh,
it went in the trash very fast.
Yeah, when you have Randy Orton making work of Aiden English, it's like, ugh. And you have Rusev kind of interjecting his way in there.
Then Rusev made quicker work of Randy Orton.
I didn't like his amped up version of himself. I felt it was kind of corny. You know what I mean? With his beard and the way he was so amped up to beat Randy Orton. I just was like, you know what? This is kind of corny. It doesn't really make me believe Rusev is any tougher. I feel like Rusev's a tough dude, and you don't have to have him act like a freak or act super excited to win a matchup. I think a better angle for him is just a stoic destroyer. He's out there, he goes out there and destroys people, similar to a Taz back in the days of ECW. You don't have to have him, really say a whole lot. Just walk to the ring, destroy the man, similar to Samoa Joe. I feel like if we could have a matchup between two guys on two different rosters, Samoa Joe versus Rusev could be a massive, that'd be a nice matchup, right? But that's what you got in Rusev. This is a destroyer, and you got him out there. You have him out there with all the gimmicks, talking about nations and all that. No, just go out there and be a tough son of a gun, and I think that would suit Rusev.
The thing is, you need to pair him with some type of manager. What you need is in R.I.P. Bobby the Brain Heenan. You know what I'm saying? We haven't even discussed that yet.
He would have been nice with Rusev, huh?
Well, somebody like him. And you have somebody like him, and she's a female, and that's Lana. Lana is doing the best she can do with Tamina, who's absolutely atrocious. But if you can somehow get Lana to be almost that Bobby the Brain Heenan-esque character where she's managing not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 or 5 different people all at one time, and you give them all their individual spotlights, maybe not every show, but every other show, I think that helps elevate her, and I think that's what you want to see out of Rusev. I think Rusev does a great job being able to cut his own promos and being able to speak for himself. I think he does a phenomenal job. He can be one of those guys, kind of like Nick Bockwinkel was with Bobby the Brain Heenan, where you've got a heel who can sit there and talk, and then you've got a heel manager who can sit there and talk. And there's nothing wrong with that. Put them all together, and you got people who can cut promos left and right. And they're just sitting there slicing and dicing people. I think it's outstanding. I think that's what you need to do. I think you're right. You don't need Rusev to come out there, and you don't need him to talk about his heritage. You don't need him to come out there and talk about his country and his people. You don't need that. Just let him come out there and let him sit there and just spit on guys and just cut them to pieces with his words. And you compare him with a guy like Lana, and I think it works out incredible because I don't need to sit there and I don't need him to do corny things. I don't need him to have flag matches. I need him to be a destroyer.
Do you like racist gender?
No,
I like Racist Jinder. The guy the last couple of weeks has been the highlight of the shows, and that he comes out, on his rug and starts making fun of people. And
I was sitting there and I was like, wow, this just went down a very, very dark alley.
You heard last week's promo too.
Yeah.
I was like,
and
wow.
That was borderline. This one, he crossed the line.
Okay, what made you think he crossed the line? What was the line?
It was him doing his Asian impersonation.
Yeah.
At that moment, so I just got a brand new phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there, I switched carriers and providers, and I'm trying to get used to my brand new phone. So I was really bored with SmackDown while I was watching it, and I'm sitting there goofing around on my phone trying to get it set up and trying to get all my apps situated and everything opened up with my emails and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I've got it basically playing in the background while I've got my head down. I keep looking up, head down, looking up, head down, and I hear Jinder do his promo, and I hear him start to talk with this Asian cadence, or what is supposed to be an Asian cadence. And I looked up and I was like, are we doing this right now?
Yeah.
We're doing this. And right there, I sit there, I have my computer open, and I type Jinder cuts almost racist promo.
Yeah, that was awesome. I like his growing confidence on the mic. He's taking his time. I love his, super long entrance. It's just, you could see the development of a character like this Jinder Mahal. That was a jobber.
He does a great job. He does a phenomenal job. I'm very impressed with him, but I don't think you need to do a racist promo for him.
Yeah, and then again, I felt like the way you introduced the Ty Dillinger, Baron Corbin feud was ridiculous. I just felt like, look, you can develop feuds in a different way other than to involve AJ Styles. AJ Styles, when you have him, and I know he's older, you're trying to protect him, but you just have him have a match. You can have him have a quality 8-minute match. The dude can wrestle.
AJ Styles is probably the best guy you have in the ring right now.
Exactly.
Just let him wrestle. Let him do his matches.
Either wrestle or do a promo. That's it. Stop with this blend of, where you have AJ Styles fight Baron Corbin, who came out to accept the U.S. Open Challenge, and you have Ty Dillinger come in and interact. And then I hate the notion of, the match didn't really start yet. You're just doing moves. Ring the damn bell.
Yeah.
It's like, you're doing moves, so ring the bell. This is not yet a sanctioned match. Meanwhile, AJ's pouncing on the guy. It was corny all the way around. I didn't like it, and I like to see the feud between Corbin and Dillinger. I just didn't like the way they introduced it, and AJ will continue. He's the U.S. champ for another week, and we'll see who steps up next week. New Day versus Hype Brothers. We obviously know Hype Brothers are going to feud at some point. So you have Mojo Rawley and Zack Ryder in the back, and Mojo's like, something's got to change. Yeah, you got to destroy Zack Ryder and get into a real feud. Yeah. That's a gimmick. The Stay Hype gimmick is one that's got to be just gone real quick. It's over.
I'm over Mojo.
We're over
I'm
Mojo.
really over Mojo. I do like Zack Ryder.
He's a great wrestler, and
he's going to turn heel at some point.
Yes.
They're already kind of laying the seeds and planting the foundation for it. And the moment it happens, and the moment he sits there and he takes out Mojo, I'm going to be extremely pumped.
Charlotte came back, and it was nice to have all the women.
She was probably the saving grace.
Yes, you have a quality wrestler in the show. You got a person that can cut a promo, and then you have Natty, which I don't like, the way they're portraying her as a champion. You have the other women there that want to get back into the ring and get back their title. So it was nice that Charlotte won the Fatal 4-Way. She's going to take on Natty in Detroit, and it'll just be a nice matchup, one where most people will think that Charlotte's going to take the title in Detroit.
I would think so. I mean, look, you gave Natty a nice little run. I think she was overdue to become a champion.
The Crazy Cat Lady line was great.
It was great. I popped super hard for that.
Good.
I thought it was outstanding. But I think you're right. I think Charlotte comes, she wins. I think that'll be her first belt on SmackDown. So I think it was a nice way to reintroduce her because she's been away dealing with the things with Ric Flair. So I think it was an outstanding way to sit there and reincorporate her. She still is a face. She's not a heel. I don't know if she's going to have a heel turn. Maybe this is her run as a face. But I think they take the strap off Natty. I think it was a nice nod to Natty for helping bring all these women along. Because what you don't realize is what Natalie does with all these girls individually. She is basically the mother hen. She sits there, she trains these girls, she helps them when there are matches going on in the ring. If she's part of it, she's usually coaching them through, and she's basically calling the spots before they happen. If the match is over, she'll sit there, she'll watch tape with the girls, and she'll really coach them up in the back, and she'll tell them what they need to do. She is probably the best pound-for-pound women's wrestler they have. And I say that, and I know how good Charlotte is. Believe me, I understand. Charlotte is physically gifted. She's explosive. She can do a lot of different things off the top rope, in between the ropes. She can do a ton. But Natalie is probably the most gifted for knowing how a match should go, knowing the psychology in and out of the ring, and then sitting there putting the match together. At some point, Natalie will become a agent, and she'll be the one who is responsible for putting the matches together in the back. And I see you smirking at me. I don't know if it's because I'm on one of my diatribes or not. I'm not sure, but I see you smirking. Why are you smirking?
No, I just made a funny tweet on our Twitter page. I said, if a baseball game is played, I tweeted at Lynn Hennig, if a baseball game is played but nobody watches it, did it really happen? I'm just fascinated by a lot of talk about baseball. It's just not one of those things where it's just like, oh my God, I just want to hear the news that Brett Ausmus is fired. That's where my mind is at.
Do you remember when we were kids? And do you remember the only reason you would ever tune into a game? I was talking to my dad about this when I was working on his ceiling. And I was like, they're going to go back to that point in that era where the only reason you watched a game was so you could hear Ernie Harwell.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid, I would tune into baseball games, not because, Bobby Higginson was up to bat. It was because I enjoyed baseball as a child, and I enjoyed Ernie Harwell calling the game. That was the reason why I would sit there and I would listen to the games.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going to go.
Development, seeing how this team is going to be put together. It's going to be more behind the scenes stuff than on the field next year. We're probably talking 90 losses again next year, probably.
It's going to be bad.
But you and I can agree, Raw won the week, back to 2-2.
Back to 2-2.
Yes, sir.
And like I said before, on Sunday, we had the bad news that Bobby the Brain Heenan did pass away. I'm not sure how much of a Bobby the Brain Heenan
Super. When he was with Rick Rude, it was awesome. I loved him on the mic. I thought it was great. And the biggest call, one of his biggest calls of all time, was when the NWO was formed. He was the voice that was like, whose team is Hogan on? And then once the leg drop was hit, it was great. He was there. And Bobby the Brain Heenan is just a storied manager, one that I wish they would bring back.
Hulk Hogan is here! Hulk Hogan's here! Hulk Hogan is in the building! You damn right he is! Go get him, Hulkster! Yeah, but whose side is he on? What are you talking about? Whose side is he on? What are you talking about? Yes, sir! Get him, Hogan! Go get him, baby! Come on and get some of this now! Who's bad now, boys? Hulk Hogan arrived. Hulk! Oh! God! Is he the third man?
I got chills.
What the hell is going on here? Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW.
Oh, always great. He's the third man. Oh, I still want
that match.
Greatest. It's still Hogan's one of the greatest promos of all time. When
Ever.
he turned heel, it was great with Mean Gene. Hey, I got a bunch of lawyers up in here. It was great when the NWO formed.
Great.
Still one of the best.
Bobby
promos.
the Brain Heenan is okay. So if there's a top 5 for managers, he is my number 1, and followed closely by probably Jim Cornette. And then they can just go in any order after that. And Paul Heyman's in there somewhere. And there are been some absolutely outstanding managers, but Bobby the Brain Heenan was probably the best to ever do it. And he was a very good wrestler. He was an exceptional announcer. He would probably be most remembered for his heel managerial skills.
It was awesome. R.I.P. Bobby the Brain Heenan. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of Doc and Jock. Thanks everybody for your continued support. As you can see, we're rolling out a lot of new podcasts. Awesome stuff happening at the network. You can check everything that's happening on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast and our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you so much for finding us.
Go Blue, go Green, go Lions.
Who are the Hype Brothers?
Let me Google it real quick. I can't believe I forgot.
Yeah.
Dude, it's been a bad day for me. I'm sorry, dude. Normally I'm right on top of it.
Yeah, I don't even know who they are anymore.
Hype Bros.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.